Okay, I've started it. Okay, guys, let's start. Uh, okay, so our today's topic is automation. Like, we have seen the basics of Java, whatever we need to know. Like, we would be again visiting those concepts, no doubt about that. But like, we have at least set up the stage so that you guys can write us scripts in Selenium. Right? Now, today we are going to talk about automation now. Okay, now we would be talking about UI automation. Then also we are going to talk about the backend automation, like automation of REST APIs, web services, how the UI automation is different than these kinds of automation. Then what are the different UI automation tools are available in the market? What are the principles they work on? Like, as I had mentioned you yesterday, UI automation tools, they have some principles which they work on. So those principles we are going to study and we are going to discuss today, guys. And then we are going to understand the architecture of Selenium as a tool, like what kind of different components are there in the Selenium. Then we are going to understand the history of Selenium, like when it started off as an IDE, which some of you guys had mentioned in your introduction that you guys have learned IDE, right? So that IDE is what Selenium got started off. Then the RC came. After that, WebDriver came. Our main focus during the course is going to be on the WebDriver, that is Selenium 2.0. But we need to know the history of Selenium, how it how it started and how it got evolved into what it is currently. We would also be looking at what is Selenium 3.0, how the Selenium support has got extended to the native applications automation, mobile applications, also the desktop application automation also now can be done using Selenium. But how it got started off, like all these things we are going to learn and discuss in our today's session. And then from tomorrow we are going to start writing our scripts in Selenium. Okay, that is our journey. And we would also be, like, I'll be just telling you like what we would be looking at in our tomorrow's session. We are going to look at Maven first. Okay, like Maven, how Maven works, and like in what all things Maven helps us. And then we would be setting up the Selenium project, and we would be starting with our very first Selenium script in our tomorrow session. Okay, this is our agenda for today and tomorrow. So now let's get started off, guys. Guys, if you are unmute, any of you, then please mute yourself, because our today's session is going to be only about discussion. So a lot of things we are going to discuss in our today's session. So a lot of discussion is going to happen. If you have any queries in this today's session, just stop me there and there itself and ask it, right? Today we are not going to do anything practicals on Selenium are going to get started off with, as I said, from tomorrow's session. But today we are going to understand lots and lots of details about Selenium as a tool. Okay, now let's get started. Like manual testing, you guys know, like manual testing. In the manual testing, let's say I have an application and I have a module, login module. So the login module, what is the job that login module does? Like if you perform the if you provide the valid credentials, then that login module lets you enter into the application. If you provide the wrong credentials, then it gives you the error and it stops you from getting into the application. Okay, this is the simple job that login module does. Okay, now let's understand how the manual tester does. I'm just setting up a stage here again for somebody who doesn't know, or who like who have just started their careers in software testing, and they want to know first what is automation and why to use it, and what are the different advantages and disadvantages of them, and then we will move on. Okay, so let's say you have a login module and now somebody has asked you to test it. So what you will test in the login module, like you will provide the valid credentials. You will get one form, the login form in front of you, and then you will get two edit controls. One is username, another one is password, and login button would be given to you. And then you will test it by providing the different credentials there. First you will check, okay, if I enter username, but if I keep the password field blank and click on login button, then what will happen? So you will just do those steps. Okay, so what you are doing here is you are interacting with the UI of your application while doing the testing of it. So you are entering some text like valid credentials into the username. You're not doing anything on the password field, and you are clicking on the login button. Then you will just check like whatever the prompt error message the application will give you. You will just check the message given on that prompt. It should be something like please enter password. Okay, so that is what you are expecting your application to behave in such a situation. So you'll get the error prompt. You will just read that the message from the prompt, and you will check with the expected one. Let's say your specification of this particular login module says that if you don't enter the password and tries to enter into the application, then the login module will give you this message, please enter password. So you'll just check it whether it is indeed behaving according to what the specification is specifying about it, right? So if the error message you are getting is according to the specification over there, then you will say test case passed. Then you will move on to the next one. So there the next, how would you check the next? Now what you will check is like you will now keep the username field blank. Now you will enter the valid password, click on login button, and then again you expect your application to give the error message saying that please enter username. Okay, and then you will just compare it with the what is mentioned in the specifications over there. And now the error message what you are getting is if it is according to the specification given, then you will say okay, it is passing, it is working fine here as well. Then you will check with the invalid credentials, means you will enter the data in both the fields but not the valid username and password, and you will try to log in into the application, and then you are expecting the message from the application wrong username or password. Okay, so this is how you test the feature manually, right? Now what is the problem in this? Like the manual testing is going on absolutely fine. So then why do we need to have the automation tools? Now let's understand the bit of it. Like why do we need the automation tool? As we are interacting with the UI of our application, we are testing it, we are checking the behavior of our application. By reading the messages from the UI, we are also giving the inputs to the application by using the different UI controls over there. So everything is going on fine. Then what is the need of something else here, right? Now we need to understand some history over here, like history about the development life cycles, how they started evolving. When the the applications used to build with the waterfall model, like waterfall model means like where the requirements used to be gathered, then the design, then coding, then testing. So the process used to be sequential, in a sequential manner. The process used to happen, right, one after the other, and testing used to happen at the relatively at the end, like at the very close to the release of the product or application, right? So the testing was never an iterative process. It was only used to happen at the end. But then the iterative lifecycle models came, like RAD, and these models like rapid application development model, where your entire the requirement which has been given to you from the customer. So customer wants some application to be built. Let's say account system want to be built, but then he gives you the requirement, but then you don't release the whole set of requirement in a single release. What you do is like you divide them based on the priority prescribed by the customer, right? So then the releases gets divided into multiple versions. So you release your first version, let's say with initial 3 requirements, priority requirements. You release it, customer uses it, and then the next 3, let's say, requirements you work on with the version 2. So now what is happening here is with every version of your application is getting evolved. Your application under test, or like your software is getting evolved every now and then. With different versions you are adding some more functionalities into it. So what is the risk here now? The risk is, let's say version 1 where you are only dealing with the 3 requirements. So you tested it at the end, let's say once all the whole coding has been done, you tested it, you released it, and customer has started using it. Now when you go to the next version, that is version 2, now in the version 2 you are going to add 3 more requirements, 3 more implementations are going to get added, right? Now what is the risk here? Along with testing these newly added requirements, what additional responsibility you guys have now with respect to this second version? Whether the 3 requirements which you guys had added into the first version, which have been now carried forward to this second one, whether they are still working fine or not. So usually on a given version, the testers would like to focus on the upcoming things, like the things which have been added recently. Okay, so they want to concentrate there, like because the features are relatively new, the things are not yet settled down. So you want your testing focus to be more on these newly added features. But along with that, there is one additional responsibility of regression testing. Regression testing is like if you are adding something, like if you are changing the code for adding something or for fixing some bugs. So for these things, if you are changing the code, so you want to make sure that whatever was working fine, in the until the release of the previous version, so those things are continue to be working fine in this version as well, and then you release the version 2. So you release the version 2 after having a good amount of testing on the newly added functions, as well as the regression of the the older ones, like which you had added into the first version. Now when you moved to the third version, now again new 3 requirements would be implemented, but there are, along with those 3 requirements, newly implemented requirements, you have the 6 which have been now carried forward from the previous 2 versions to this third version. Now what is your responsibility as a tester is becoming again? So again you need to focus on testing of the newly added requirements along with the regression of the previous 6 features or stories, whatever you call it as. Now what is happening here, as you are approaching towards the newer versions of your application, your regression responsibility is getting increased. So at one point you are required to focus more and more on, so the demand is to focus more and more on the newly added functionalities, but on the other hand the regression responsibility is also getting and is also creeping up. It is also getting increased here, right? Now as a tester, now there is a dilemma here, like as a tester, should I focus on this particular thing, the newly added features, or should I then focus on getting the regression done? Now what is the the option for this is, now this is about the RAD, where the frequency of getting the features added was quite it's not quite frequent as compared to the latest now current our life cycle models like Agile. So where Agile is quite dynamic in nature as compared to the RAD. So in the RAD, if you used to get the new version after, let's say, every month, for example, every month you will get those 3 requirements added, and then after that you will just start with the testing of those three requirements along with the regression one. So it used to happen after every month. Now with the advent of this agile, which is quite dynamic in nature, what has started happening is, like every now and then, like every say 5 days, you are getting a new build after every 5 days. So after every 5 days, you are getting something new added into your application, as well as the list of features, which have been accumulated in that particular version is also getting increased day by day. So here your regression responsibility is also getting increased very frequently, and also the new features are also getting added very frequently in your application. Now as a tester, if on every second day I'm getting something new added into my application, which I need to focus on, from the testing point of view, and also I need to take care of the regression of the features which are already there added into the application. Now it becomes very difficult for the tester now if they are continuing to do both the things like progression testing as well as regression testing. If they continue to do both the things manually, then it will not be possible for them to, on every build, they cannot check all the test cases related to the the old features, and they cannot just tell you on every build that all the features are absolutely working fine, while I am concentrating on testing, which has got added recently, right? So in order to, this manually, it's not possible. The regression, every now and then your regression responsibilities are going to get increased, right? So regression, uh, manual regression is not possible here, guys. At one point of time, on one end, I want to concentrate on the newly added features, because that is what we need to apply our domain knowledge, we need to apply our testing knowledge, we need to understand that particular feature, we need to focus more on like what to test, how to test, why to test, and why not to test. So we need to focus more on that side. Okay, by applying our technical and domain knowledge and testing knowledge, everything you apply, and you write down your test cases, you write down your high level test cases, then you get them reviewed, then you convert them into the low level test cases, then you execute those test cases, and then if you find any bugs, then you report those bugs. So this is quite effort intensive task here. Whereas the regression, where your test case, you have already applied your domain knowledge, you had already applied your testing knowledge, technical knowledge, and you had already come up with the set of test cases. Okay, those you just need to rerun. Like you just need to follow those steps. Like enter this here, press tab, enter this here, click on OK button. So you have everything written down there in the form of steps, which control to interact with, and what kind of an interaction has to be done, right? So each and every test case what you have written for your older features, those are in terms of this, like every step is mentioned there. So you have to just read that step. So there is nothing to be applied, no domain knowledge. Like while executing, when I am executing, enter username into the enter value into the username, enter value into the password, click on login button. I'm not applying any technical knowledge here. That I had applied when I actually designed this test case. While designing the test case, while deciding on what to test, how to test, and why to test, at that time I had applied all my knowledge, whatever is required, and I have designed the test case. But once the test case is designed, execution doesn't take any intelligence, right? It's just a donkey work, you can say. Like you are required to just read out the step. You have to just understand what element, the UI control you are referring into that step, and what kind of interaction you are required to do. Only these two things you need to understand and follow the steps, right? So it's a donkey work. So then why not to have some automated solution for it, like which will do it for on behalf of us. So like if the step is saying click on login button, then that that automated solution will do it for us. And when it is doing that for us, I can concentrate on getting the new test cases written, right? So when you get any new feature for the testing, so there you are required to understand the specification, you are required to understand the effect of that newly added functionality on your rest of the application. You need to understand it, you need to apply different testing techniques like equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, and what decision table and pairwise testing and all that stuff. After you understood that, and then you have to write down the high level test cases, then low level test cases. So lot of intelligence is getting used over here, and you need to focus more on here than to doing something which anybody can do, a donkey work you can say. The test execution, once the test cases, low level test cases are available to you, then execution of those test cases are donkey work. So this donkey work got replacing with automation tools, guys. Now many people ask me like, okay, so is it that the manual testing, now there is a lot of boom is into like automation. Everywhere you will find automation now, even if it is a small company or a big company, everywhere you will find automation. But does it mean that the manual testing is going to now die soon? No, absolutely not. Manual testing means like once you get the feature, you need to apply the domain knowledge, technical knowledge, and all kind of a knowledge what you have, and rather what is required to understand over there and to test it from different perspectives. So for that, human intelligence is required, and something which requires a human intelligence cannot be replaced with the automated solution. Okay, if you go to the other industries, like let's say automotive industries, so there also you will see the robots are working now, but they are not doing the job of a design engineer. Engineer is required there, who will understand the vehicle from different perspectives. He will, he will apply his engineering knowledge, and he will create the design which would be, which will make that particular car, let's say, more fast, more fuel efficient and all. So in order to make that, the human intelligence is required. Where the humans are getting replaced? On the shop floor, where the chassis is required to, the different components of that particular vehicle is required to fit in and create the car in front of you. So there the humans are getting replaced with the robots, but not where the human intelligence is required to be put, right? So that is the same thing happening in the testing industry now. Still, the phases, the testing phases where the human intelligence is required to be applied, they are still, they are still continue to be the manual, and the where the donkey work is there, like where the donkey work is into executing the test cases, okay, written there. So there the this particular effort is getting replaced with the automation tools, guys, now, right? Just to so that just to allow a time to the testers to focus more on the newly added functionalities than to invest their time into the donkey work, right? So no organization really want their testers to invest the time into the donkey work. What organization wants is that my testers should put their intelligence into the new upcoming features, and they should come up with different scenarios, different test cases, and different point of view, and they should find the bugs from that, right? And whatever is already written, they have already invested lots and lots of human intelligence while designing the test cases. Now for executing them, why I should waste my human intelligence over there, right? And why not to allow my testers to focus more on where they are required to invest their intelligence in. So that is the automation actually, guys. Automation is not going to replace manual testing. Forget about it. Manual testing cannot be replaced because that is something where you need to invest your intelligence, right? Only this test execution phase, which is a donkey work, has now been mostly replaced with the automation tools. Now, when it comes to test cases, like, when the test case we say, like, we need to have a fair understanding about our application, like different components of the application. Now, when you say,
I sorry to interrupt.
yes, yes,
When you
yeah,
say
yeah,
test
please.
execution, you mean repeated test execution, right?
Yeah, obviously the regression which we do it repetitively, those regression suits you need to, frequently you need to execute them now and then. Like if you are on the version 1, then you will write down the test cases for the newly added features. Then from those test cases you will take out some suite of the test cases which you would like to run every time whenever a new build arrives. You want to just make sure that this particular feature is still intact. It is working fine. So just to confirm that whatever the suite of test cases you need, you just take it out and you automate that suite. And then for the subsequent releases or subsequent builds, you want this particular suite to be executed in order to confirm the working of the particular feature, right? And this happens repetitively, and repetitive task is also only is getting automated, guys. Here the regression suite is what is required to be automated. Now, there is another perspective to it. Like, apart from it being a donkey work, it's quite boring. I mean, I remember, like, when I was into the manual testing, like for my initial 4 hours, I worked as a manual tester. Like when I started my career, for initial 4 years, I was a manual tester, right? So there, I still remember we used to get the build like every, let's say, 1 month, and we used to perform the sanity testing. Sanity testing means, like, every tester, every tester from our organization used to have some list of features he need to confirm the correct behavior of. And we used to have the test cases for every feature assigned to us. And after every month, I still remember, after every month we used to do that stuff. Like, I used to have around 50 odd features on my name, and I used to, like, four at least 4 to 5 test cases for every topic. So around 200 to 50 test cases I used to execute after every month as a part of the regression, as a part of the sanity, right? Along, and also we used to have the newly added features also to go on our meetings. But for these 3-4 days, whenever we used to carry this particular sanity cycle, for the 3-4 days, I used to only do these things. The 3-4 days after every month, what I'm doing is I'm executing my test cases manually, and it was quite boring as well. I mean, you don't invest any intelligence into it. You are just, reading out the test cases steps, and you are just following up with those, right? So it's a repetitive, also boring, and it's kind of an vestige of an human intelligence. Like, if I had any tool doing this stuff for me, I would have concentrated more on my new features, isn't it? Now that is what the automation tool allows you. It repeat, like, whatever the repetitive task is, the regression one. So if you automate it, so it would be a good return on investment for you guys, right? So the repetitive task actually gets replaced, not the testing. Only the repetitive task from the testing, like, is getting replaced with the automation tool, guys. Yeah, so I was saying, like, when it comes to the application or a testing for that matter, now we need to understand few points here. Like, when we want to automate any test case, let's say I have some test cases to automate. right? But before I jump to the tool which I should be using, or the language which I should be using, and stuff like that, we need to do analysis about the test cases. Now let's understand the analysis guys first. Now I have an application. So application usually has two main components. If you see the front end, the component which we interact with, let's say a form of my application. I am entering some values into the edit controls. I'm clicking on the button controls and all. So the front end of my application, and the back end. Back end means the logic, the business logic of that application. So let's take very simple example. Okay, very simple example, a calculator application I have, and I want to test that calculator application. So first I will do it manually, like I'll design different test cases. For addition, I'll design test to addition with two positive numbers, two negative numbers, one positive, one negative, and then zero, then maximum number, boundary value, and stuff like that. I have designed those test cases. Now I want to automate these test cases, like few of them I want to automate, right? Now I need to decide first thing, firstly, one thing, that how would I like to automate them, like whether I want to automate them as an UI test cases or backend test cases. Now what I mean by that, I'll tell you. Now I have a calculator. Okay, let's take an example of the calculator what we usually see on our applications. It will be more clear, because that is where the I mean, if you don't get into this kind of an analysis, the problems actually starts. Now this is a calculator which I want to test. Okay, now you can see this, there are some functionalities out here like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and all that stuff. I want to test the addition functionality. Okay, and this is the UI of my application, which the user is also going to interact with my application through the UI, and I'm also now going to interact with this application as a tester using this UI. Now if I decide to test this functionality by interacting with the application's UI, so how would I test it? So I'll say 7, then I've just clicked on this 7, then I'll just say click on this plus 7 plus 7, and then I'll just click on the equal to sign. I'll just read the 14. Okay, the 14 has been displayed here. Okay, whether it is correct or not, and accordingly I'm just passing the test or failing the test, right? So I'm doing a UI wise, I'm doing the testing, UI testing. Okay, now let's say this particular addition functionality is built using some REST API. So actually it is an REST API. Like when I'm saying plus 7 equal to, so this is actually giving a call to one REST API which is deployed on the server. My 7 and 7, these things are going as an argument to that REST API. That REST API is actually doing the computation of these two values and returning 14 as an response to my UI layer, and my UI layer is reading that response and showing it to me on this field. Now if I decide to test this, now ultimately what I'm doing, what I'm using the UI for, okay, what I'm using the UI for is just entering the, I mean just giving the inputs and reading the output, but otherwise the functionality which I'm testing is of that REST API. Actually I'm not testing anything on the UI side as such. I'm just using that UI side for giving the input and receiving the output. I'm just looking at that output, reading out it, and then I'm just verifying it, right? But if the functionality of that addition is written as a REST API by my developer, then why should I not test that REST API by directly calling it? Why should I take this UI in picture here? Okay, what is the job of this UI is doing here? Nothing, right? As far as the functionality of the addition is concerned, my UI is just getting the input from me. It is calling that REST API, sending that input as is to it, and I'm getting the response back from that, whatever is this, the processing is being done, that processing is being done inside that REST API's logic only, and then it is returning that 14 or whatever the output is as a response, and my just UI is just showing it to me over here, and I'm just reading it out and comparing it. So why should I not consider directly hitting that REST API and testing it over there itself? Why should I take the UI in picture here? Okay, that is what we need to understand it first, guys, before we decide on the approach. How should I automate it? Because when we will understand the working of a UI automation tool, you guys will understand that UI automation tools are, I mean, they are very fragile in nature. Fragile in the sense they are very tightly coupled with the UI of your application. Even the slightest change in the UI may invalidate your automation script, right? So they are very tightly connected to the interfaces of your application. And interfaces, like, this interface is designed with some technology X. Then if you change the technology of your interface from X to Y, then again you need to do the modifications in your UI automation test cases or scripts, right? So they are very tightly uh, connected to your UI of an application. So there are disadvantages also of doing the UI automation. We will be talking about. That's the reason why we should know very well how the UI automation tool works. We should know the principles of UI automation. Okay, there is no option to it. If you know it, then you will understand, okay, this is how it works, and this is how it is tightly connected to the interfaces over there. So if you change anything from that interface, then they will have the large impact on your automation scripts, right? So let's say if I decide to test this particular addition functionality by hitting the REST API directly. So REST API is what? REST API is a function. Let's say an addition function written in Java, for example, but it is exposed to us for the for calling through HTTP request. So let's say I have a Java program, and in that Java program I can call an addition function, which is required to be written in Java only, because the source code from where I'm planning to call is in Java. So all the functions I'm calling, okay, they should be written in Java language. Then only it can be called from that kind of a code over there, right? But what is REST API? REST API is like whatever the language you are using to call, and the function which you are calling, whatever the language is used to create that function, they don't need to be same. Okay, because you are calling that particular function over HTTP request. So it is just an HTTP request which is giving the call to that function, and not your source code. Actually, your source code is actually only generating one HTTP request, which is going to that server, and then based on that request parameter, server is invoking that particular function, and that server is hosting that particular function, calling it. It is executing that particular function in its environment, and then whatever that output of that function is, it is just sending it to you as an HTTP response, right? And then you are receiving that response, and then you are processing that response again as a part of your application's logic, or whatever that logic you are calling that function in, right? So now here, why should I not consider testing this particular function by sending it an HTTP request? So I'll do is I'll just send the request to the server, will send the required arguments what that particular function needs. So that function will be executed, and I will get the response, HTTP response back, the result, and I'll just check, okay, whether in that result only, maybe a JSON or XML, whatever the form that the response gets returned to me. So I'll just see whether I got 14 or not. Why should I take the UI picture here? Okay, if my focus is on testing whether that 7 plus 7 is indeed 14, so here I'm just concentrating on functionality of that particular function there. So why not to do this? And that is what has started now, guys. Now when the things, in initial days, people used to test each and everything thing through UI only. Like okay, so like whatever I want to test, I will take UI in picture. I'll give the input from UI. Though the focus is on testing the functionality of that particular module, it could be a REST API, it could be any function as well. But always the input used to, like the UI used to be used for giving the inputs and receiving the output and then checking it from there, and that is how the testing used to happen. But when it comes to manual testing, it's still fine. It's still fine. Like even if your focus is on testing that particular functionality, but you are using your UI just to get rid of more of the technicalities. Because see, if you want to test the REST API, then you need to have a bit understanding of that REST API, how to call it, how to analyze the response of it and all that stuff. So you need to get into some technicalities over there. But if you want to get rid of these technicalities, but still as a manual tester, even if you use the UI for giving the input and receiving the output, that still is fine thing. That's still fine. But when it comes to automation, right, when it comes to automation and you are automating this particular the test cases of that additional functionality through the UI, then there is a problem in the sense the UI, as I previously mentioned, the UI automation tools or the UI automation scripts, they are tightly connected with the UI of your application. Okay, so if your developer changes the whole interface, let's say based on the requirement of the customer, then your automation scripts, which have been working fine, they starts getting the problems now, because now there are a lot of changes have been done. Though there is no change into the addition functionality which you are actually testing, okay, which you are actually testing, and your test cases are actually targeted that particular targeted towards that particular functionality. Okay, that particular functionality is still intact. Okay, but you are facing challenges in executing the test cases targeted something which has not been changed at all. So those test cases have been impacted because of some irrelevant changes on the UI side, right? So that is what happens when you are doing the automation, and that's why people have started bifurcating the things now. Now they have like, okay, automation is now a very important thing, right? Now people don't automate each and everything from UI side, because they have understood this point now. Because it could happen that the test, the component under test is intact and the changes are on the UI side, and as the test cases are automated as an UI scripts, and due to the change in the UI, which is not anywhere related to the functionality which we are testing, the scripts have started failing, unnecessarily. Okay, if there is any change into that functionality and because of that if the test fails, that is acceptable. But if your tests are getting impacted because of something, some change which is nowhere connected to what you are testing, then it is quite frustrating, right? So that is why now when anything is taken up for the automation, so first what is happening is like people have changed their approach now towards the testing. Now what they do is, okay, I have to test this particular addition functionality which is written as a REST API. So why not to test it? Why should we bring the UI in picture here? Yeah, few UI test cases we will do, like whether this particular UI indeed reading the response correctly and showing us the result at the correct place on our window. For that we will automate one or two test cases, but rest all the functionality what we want to test, we will test it by directly calling that REST API. This is a huge shift, guys, which this automation has brought in. Like I also, when I started, and I entered into the automation in 2011, January 2011. I have been working in the automation, full-fledged into the automation, right? Prior to that, for around 3.5 years, I was completely into manual testing. Absolutely, there was nothing automation. Was not at all involved into my responsibilities there. Now we also used to do these things like everything automation should go through the UI. Then we got an understanding. No, UI automation scripts are getting failed, because of the changes into the UI which are nowhere connected to the functionality in which I am testing there. And we have to maintain the scripts then for something which we are not at all interested in, right? And we used to waste our time and energy over there, right? So now what happens is, now you decide what test cases you want to test by directly hitting that component which is under question, and which maybe some subset of those test cases you will do through UI, just to check whether the response or whatever the return value of that particular component test is indeed being read correctly from the UI layer or not, and it is whether it is working fine or not, right? Like the whatever the error code, let's say the REST API has written an error code 500, and that 500 error code, the UI is reading that 500 error code, and it is giving us the proper error message on the console. Please enter correct username and password. So this is the message which we are getting from the UI. After that, UI reads that 500 error code, it gives us. So whether it is whether it is processing that responses correctly or not, for those test cases we will only have them from the UI side, but rest of the whole functionality, let's test it on the backend side itself, right? So because as I told you, UI automation scripts are very difficult to manage. There are lots and lots of problems along with the maintenance, the synchronization, and many things actually are there, which we would be talking about. But they are quite challenging to handle as well, right? That's why the most of the efforts has now shifted towards the backend side as far as the automation is concerned, and only the test cases where you are required to really need to test something on the UI side, they are now getting automated as an UI test case. Otherwise, most of the things are now shifted to the backend now testing. You are because of this automation thing, right? Now let's understand. Now let's say we have decided to do the UI automation. Like for the REST API automation, we have decided some tool like Postman or REST Assured API and stuff like that. Okay, but let's say we have few test cases which we want to automate through UI only. UI test cases they are. By interacting with the UI only of the application, we would be testing that. Now the second question is which tool we should use that. Now there is very, because of this Selenium and all, people thinks that okay, Selenium is only the tool. Whatever the application is, Selenium is the tool. No, this is not the case, guys. Now selecting a tool is quite a study in itself. It's not like this. Like, if I want to automate XYZ application, let's suggest Selenium to the customer because it is free and blah 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 things. No, it's not that easy. Selecting a correct tool for the application is quite an important study, guys. Now let's understand what all things we need to study before we decide on which tool we should go for. Okay, now let's assume that we want to, as I said, we have some test cases which we would like to automate from the UI. Okay, now the first question we should ask is, what is the interface of my application? Okay, what is the interface? Now what I mean by that is, many a times I get a call from from people that I have a Java application, can I use Selenium? I have a .NET application, can I use Selenium? But please understand the thing, guys. Let's say this is an calculator. The calculator's interface is written in design language. Now basically the interfaces of the applications, they get designed with with some technologies. The way we have technologies like C Sharp, Java, okay, they are used to write your business logics. 2 plus 2 4. This particular logic is written in Java, but the interface, okay, through which I am interacting with my application, the the technologies using which the interfaces get designed, they are not Java. They are something else. They are SDKs, software development kits, set of libraries are made available, okay, using which you design the application. So asking this question that I have a Java application, can I use Selenium? It's vague. I mean, it's not at all of any use to decide or to give you an answer on this. What is important is, as an UI automation tester, what you need to know is, forget about what is the language which has been used to write your business logic. First, try to know what is the design technology which is used to design the interface of the application. Now I can have this calculator designed using HTML, where the business logic of this calculator, where 2 plus 2 4, 2 minus 2 0, all this business logic I have written in Java. Okay. Now I can have one more version of my application where my interface is designed. My backend language is still Java, but whereas the interface is designed using Swings or AWT applets. Okay, so interface is different. My logic is still in Java. So there is a huge difference here. There is a huge difference here in terms of UI automation, because our interface design technology completely got changed from HTML to Swings or some applets. Okay. Now I can have a .NET application where my code I have written in C Sharp, okay, of my application, where the interface is designed using a different technology called WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, is a technology to design the interfaces. Okay, whereas I can have my logic written in C Sharp, whereas the interface of my application is designed using some WinForms or some different kind of technology. So always remember this thing, guys. It's not important that which language has been chosen to write your logic of the business logic or the backend of your application. What is important to know here is, when it comes to UI automation, the first and foremost thing which is important to know is, which is the design technology. Which technology is used to design the interface of the application? This is what we should know. That is first thing. Okay. So now, based on the interfaces of the application, there are few types of applications. Okay. Now let's understand this. Based on the interface of the application, I am saying, the first is web application. Now here, when I am saying web application, it doesn't mean that two-tier architecture, three-tier architecture, client is communicating with the server is, no, in not that terms. In terms of design of the application, I'm saying I have a web application. Now what I mean by that, if the interface of my application, let's say this calculator, it designed using a web technologies like HTML, HTML5, Vue.js, Vue.js, AngularJS. So these are some technologies which are called as web technologies. If you have your application designed with these technologies, the interface I'm saying, I am using the word design and not develop. Designing and development is different thing. I'm saying designing of my interface of my application. If it is into a web technology like HTML, let's say if I use HTML to design these controls of my of the UI of my application, then my application I'll call it as web application, web interface application, let's call it as. Okay, web interface application. Now if my interface is written into these technologies, then I need to use browsers. Okay, so I need to go to the browsers and I need to load the interface of my application into it, because the browsers can execute these web technologies, and they can render the page after executing this code. They can render the page in front of us. That's why we need a browser. Okay, so if your interface is not into any of these web technologies, it is in something else like technologies. There are other technologies as well apart from web technologies. There are others as well, which let's say this particular, let's take an example of this only, this calculator. This is not designed using any of the web technologies. If it was, then we would have to use the browser in order to load the interface of it, right? But as it is not designed using any web technology, hence we don't need browser to load the UI. Then what it is designed using? So there are other technologies also which are called as native technologies for designing the interfaces. So there are many, like if you go to the Java side, you have got Swings, you have got AWT, applets, and many others. I've just given you two examples on the Java side. If you .NET, again many interface design technologies are available over there as well. So if you have your application's interface designed using any of these technologies, which are native technologies, then you will not use browser for for opening the interface of your application. Your application will be opening outside of the browser. Okay, something like this. So if your like your Java, your application is written into Java, but then what it is going to do with us here in this case? What we need to know is, okay, what is the language, the technology which is used to design the interface? Just tell me that. Whether it is your Java or C# doesn't matter. What matters most for the UI automation is what is the interface design technology. Okay, that is the first question we need to ask. In the POCs, like when you go for the POCs, like if you have got a new project, okay, the automation project, what first question you should ask is, what is the interface design technology? To whoever is like customer or manager or whoever is, what is the interface design technology here? And based on that, you have to bifurcate your application into three categories. So one is web interface application, where each and every control which is part of the interface of your application is designed using some kind of web technology. Second type, native. So all the controls, okay, each and every control rather of your application's interface is designed using some native interface design technology. There is no web, there is no control designed using web technology. All the controls, whatever you interact with in any of in any of your page of your application, if it is designed using native technology, your application is native interface application. Okay, so first is web interface application, second is native interface application, and third category is hybrid. Now what is hybrid? Some of the controls which we interact with, they are native, and some of the windows are designed using some web technology. That's why we open them into the browser. Okay, so if the interaction with your application's UI is not only limited to web or native, but it is combination of both, like some controls you interact with, they are native, and some control as a part of your interaction with the application you interact with web controls, then your application is hybrid. Okay, so you have to first decide on this, like when you are into POC, it's not Selenium. Okay, let's use Selenium. It doesn't happen like that. First, you should understand out of these three categories where your application fits in which category it fits in. If it is a pure web application, web interface application, where each and everything is a web control, or if it is pure native application where each and every control is a native interface control, or it is combination of both, hence it is hybrid application. So you have to decide on this first. Now next point, the POC, the next point, what kind of licensing you need. Like, I mean, when it comes to the automation tool, the very important point is obviously the cost here, obviously. But like many a times, there are the organizations who don't use free tools. I mean, I know few organizations who don't use free tools at all. I'll tell you one very, one example here. I had got a call from Saudi Arabia, from somebody from Saudi Arabian bank had visited my profile on LinkedIn, and I guess he was working as a manager over there, and they were into starting the automation of their mobile applications that time. I mean, it's around some 2-3 years back it happened. So I got a call from that person. I don't remember the name, but I still remember that he is from Saudi Arabian bank, working as a manager over there. So he called me and he said, Pranadav, I just read your blog on the LinkedIn on Appium, the mobile automation, and I really liked it. So I would like to have a discussion with you about our current requirement, automation requirement, what we have here. So so he said, like, we are doing the POC for tool for our mobile applications. So what would be your suggestion for this? So I said Appium would be my choice here, then first choice. So he said, no, we don't use free tools here. Okay, it's the policy of our organization that not to use free tools. Okay, so we don't believe into that. Appium we cannot use, so Appium is out of the question for us. What would be your next choice? He's then said. So I said, if you are looking for the licensing tools only, licensed, okay, test, you have a plant, you have test complete, and many others. So what I want to say here is, not every customer you will encounter would be, would be fine with using free tools. So don't take it for granted that every now and then you would be using Selenium or Appium and only the free tools. Okay, don't take this thing granted. Now I have seen in the industry now, I have observed that, okay, the people actually take it for granted. Okay, when it comes to automation, okay, Selenium is the only one which we should be going for. No, it's not like that. I don't take it for granted. So there are the organizations who really are against using the like free tools. They only want licensed tools. So if you want licensed tools, so now we need to understand what are the different types of licensing they support. Okay, they pay the licensing fees only once to them, or like for example test complete, QTP, only one time you have to just invest into it, and every year you have to just pay the AMC, annual maintenance contract, the AMC fees. So in that AMC fees you will get the 24/7 support of from them. Then you will get the bug fixes, whatever the bug fixes, new versions of that particular tool you will get. So that is AMC, right? So AMC you will be paying every year, but licensing fee is only it's only once, perpetual. And there are few tools which are subscription based. Subscription based means what? Every year you have to pay the same amount of license. For C-test. C-test is not a perpetual license tool. It's a subscription based tool. So every year you have to pay $3,500 to them for a single license. Every year it's an investment.
Yeah, Pranodai.
Every year here. Okay.
Pranodai, sorry I interrupt you.
Please,
Actually, the voice is breaking.
please
Hello.
understand these things very well, guys, because this is very very important, not any of the things.
Hello,
Pranodai.
Pranodai.
Okay,
Hello, Pranodai.
Yes, hello, hello.
Pranodai,
I
your
can hear
voice
you.
is your voice was cracking actually.
Okay, okay, just a minute. Let me check the network. Is it fine now? Hello?
Better than before, yes.
Okay, okay. So yeah, I was having a network issue for some time. Okay, but it looks fine now. Can you please go on mute? Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so I was saying that few tools are subscription based, but there is another category of the tools which are perpetual. Perpetual means the licensing fee you pay only once, and after that every year you just need to pay AMC fees. But whereas subscription based, where you need to pay the licensing fees every year, you need to pay the same licensing fees every year to renew the license. For example, C test and perpetual license. If you say the tools are test complete, QTP, Ranorex, they are perpetual license tools. C test, subscription based tool, where you need to pay them every year $3,500. I don't know whether it has been increased now or what, but when we were using it, we started using the C test, I guess, in 2012. I entered into automation team into January 2011, and from 2012 we started the POC for our mobile applications. So when I was doing the POC, we had done the POC of few license tools like Eggplant and CTest. Out of that, CTest we selected, and CTest at that time at least it was on subscription based tools where every year you have to pay the licensing fees, right? So subscription based. Now, if you want to go for the perpetual license, again there are types of licenses: node locked license as well as the floating license. So node locked means, let's say you have 5 people working in the automation team. So you will buy 5 node locked license. Means what? Licenses actually installed, use them on. So if you have on the 10 machines you have, let's say, test complete installed, but you have 5 licenses of test complete, you can use them only on those machines on which you have installed them. Okay, you cannot use them on any other machine. But when it comes to floating is quite different. So if you have bought, let's say, 5 licenses, so those licenses actually are monitored by one license server. So what that license server checks, at a given point of time, okay, at a given point of time, only 5 instances of the tool should be in use. Like only 5 people, whether on whatever the machines they are using it from, that's fine. But at a time, only 5 instances of the tool should be used. If the sixth one starts, then it terminates that sixth one. That is floating license. Okay, so the tools also supports, the license tools supports floating licenses as well. Now, so you need to decide on this, like whether you want to use free tool, not free tool, then license tools. Okay, then license tools, then what kind of license tools you want to go with, perpetual or subscription based. If it is the perpetual license, then in that node locked or floating. So there are few things we need to understand. Then third point, which is very, very important, is hardware software requirement. Okay, now I'll tell you very important experience of mine here. Now, uh, I mean, this while this we were deciding on the hardware software requirements. Now what happens is, like, the tools, I mean, they are free. Like some tools, like for example Appium is free. Okay, it doesn't cost you for license, but it does cost you for hardware, or it does cost you for softwares as well, right? So you need to be very, very clear about, that is what I was emphasizing more on, understanding the architecture of the tool. The reason you will get it now. Okay, why we say that? No, when we are doing the POC of the tool, we should be very clear about the architecture. I'll give you an example of it. We started, the mobile automation in 2012 January, as I told, and I was the in charge of the automation project. So after, I was just about to complete 1 year into the automation team, and I got a chance to do the POC. So prior to that, for 3.5 years, I was completely into manual, nothing automation, nothing else. But in 2011 January, I entered into the automation team and I started working on test complete for our desktop native applications. And then 2012 January, our company came up with the mobile native application, Android as well as iOS. And then we started the hunt for UI automation tool for our mobile applications, Android, iOS. So I was made an in charge of that project. So I was responsible for doing the POC and everything. So we started the POC, okay, of the tool, and there were few free tools as well. There were, I mean, in the 2012 for the mobiles, most of the tools were licensed, but still few of them, few alternatives we had, the free alternatives we had. Okay, now at that time, like around 2011 2012, uh, I mean, the along with the license tools, the free tools have started emerging. Selenium was also there, like I mean, Selenium was there. Appium was not there, but other few free automation tools were there. So these free tools are, since like the Selenium is itself since 2004. But in the initial days, like I'm talking about around 2011-12. Okay, so at that time, people were reluctant to use free tools. I'll tell you why this, and it has happened with our mobile automation project as well, which I'll be coming to that point. But let me tell you the mindset of the people at that time. Like this, prior to that, people were only knowing the use of QTP, test complete. There are very big companies, tools of very big companies like HP, Mercury. So, I mean, test complete is of automated QA, smart beer softwares, then they got acquired from. So smart beer software. So, the people were very, I mean, they were used to use these kinds of tools, like, so license tools. So license tools, they have their own advantages, guys. Let me tell you. Let me tell you those advantages as well. So they have got the 24/7 support for you. So like if you face any issues in understanding how to use a particular thing for your requirement, so you can send them the mail, their 24/7 support team, and they arrange the call for you, and they do a lot of things for you. So I mean, this kind of a liberty people were used to, right? Now, when it comes to the free tool, like let's say Selenium, Appium and all, then you don't get this kind of a liberty. You do not have any ready support available. You have to rely on, in order to get the answers for your queries, you need to rely on the user community, the people who are already using that particular tool. That's the only source you have to get your queries answered. There is no other source. That is one. Second, if you find any problem in the any defect in the tool itself, because of which you are not now able to move ahead in your project, say, and if you report on the free tool, then there is no guarantee of that being getting fixed. But when it comes to the license tools, if you report a bug, and that is something which is very important for you, I mean, from the point of view of your project, then they give you the fix. And I'm telling you this, why? Because we used to use WinRunner, which is the UI automation tool from Mercury, which then got acquired by HP afterwards. But Mercury, so Windrunner were not able to identify the elements of our application. So we reported that bug, and then they gave us the fix in the Windrunner itself. Okay, in the Windrunner tool itself, due to which now that Windrunner started identifying the elements of our application. So such kind of liberty people were used to at that time. So that's why people were not at all open for using any open source tools, or I mean any free tools. There is one more thing is like these free tools, when they got started out of the passion of that particular person, whoever has, you know, written that tool. It was just his passion. They just started off with those just for solving some problem which they at that. So those tools started from the employees of the ThoughtWorks. So they were facing, they wanted to have a automation tool, but the budget of that particular project on which they wanted to have that automation was not much. So that's why they built their own tool, and then that then it got popular and all that stuff. So developer community also was not, I mean the developers used to be only one or two at that time for these tools. And then because of that, what used to happen is like if anyone finds the issue in the tool itself, and even if he reports it, then those one or two developers, they are also doing their regular jobs, and as a side activity, they have started this tool activity. So they also were not able to find the time to fix this issue, and that's why the people were not they used to not believe on these things. When I was doing the POC for our mobile automation tool, I had suggested a few free tools, but then my manager told me, no, we don't believe into free tools. You search only for licensed tools. You know this is the words of my manager in 2012. So my manager said, no, Pranodai, we don't want any free tool. Only search for license tools for our mobile application automation. So then I left the free tools. I mean, I just removed the free tools from our list of prospective candidates, and then I just concentrated on the license tools. And then we selected ultimately. Then we selected C test, and then we started using the C test. And now around I guess 2015 or so, 2014, 2015, then these tools, the developer community also, developers community as well as the user community got increased. And there is a huge shift now because of the Selenium. It introduced a huge shift actually into this UI. I mean the test automation field, and then the people also started believing these tools. Okay, so the developers also got increased. The user community also got increased. Now these tools also now have they started coping up with the new technologies. So these tools become, in short, these tools started becoming mature, and now people then started believing them. Otherwise people were absolutely reluctant. I mean absolutely reluctant to use these tools. Okay, no, it's fine even if we need to pay for the licenses, but we want license tools only. That was the situation once. But now, because of these tools started getting mature and all, people started accepting them. And then in 2015, I'll tell you one more instance. Like 2015, so we started our mobile automation from 2012. 2015, we got the framework and everything. I was the in charge of that automation tool, like was involved into POC, pilot project, and everything for that particular UI automation project of our Android and iOS. And we built the framework from scratch and everything we got. And then 2015 came, and then the C test, the tool which we were using, it was a subscription based tool. Like we used to pay them. I'll tell you, we used to pay them. I still remember $1,500 per license per year, and we had 4 licenses, to Android to iOS. So we had around $6,000 per year investment we had. Okay, and then in 2015 CTES suddenly increased their licensing fees from 1500 to 1500 per license per year to 3500 per license per year. So more than double they increased their licensing fees. And then again my manager, he called me up and then he said, Pranodhay, now we have to think something else, because basically we are a Israel based company. I work with in an Israel based company, so our management, VP and all, they are Israelis actually. So then they said, no Pranodhay, we need to do something else now, because now they have increased their licensing fees from 1500 to $3500 directly. So we have to now search for some other alternative to it. But now they said, now the person who had said in 2012 not to go for the free tools, now that same person told me that, my manager told me, now let's go for some free tools, because now the free tools have started becoming mature now. Now whatever the tools we would be doing the POCs of, they should be free tools now. That is what he said. So I say, okay, that's fine. Then I again started my POC, and then we found Appium then. Okay, then we found Appium, and then we introduced Appium in our automation, and then we replaced, I mean within a year or so, we replaced our automation, the mobile automation. We replaced CTES with Appium, and then we shifted all our scripts, like we actually migrated all our scripts from VB script to Java. And then we we continued. Now we are with Appium now since then. Now around 5.5 years now we have been using Appium for our Android, iOS, and stuff. So at that time, why I'm telling you all this thing is because I just want you guys to to realize the importance of the POC here. When I was doing the POC of the Appium, okay, there were few challenges there. Now what are those challenges? Let's understand. Now Appium is free, there is no doubt about that. But when I was doing the study of that Appium on the web, there were not much resources were available at that time. Now you can get the book also on the Appium. There was only one book on the Appium, I mean in the market. The book was which was available at that time, it was only one copy of the book was available, and Appium Essentials kind of a book was available, and it was, I mean, for the POC purpose the books doesn't help really. It's only about your your study and your research only helps in the POCs. So I was doing the POC, and then I got to know that, okay, for iOS automation, if you want to do the automation of iOS application, you need a Mac machine. That is the case. I mean, you do not have any other way. For Android automation, you can work with the Windows machine, and when it comes to the devices, you can use simulators, I mean the virtual devices as well as the real devices and that stuff. But for iOS, you need to have a Mac machine. Now this is the point of consideration now. It has become a point of consideration. Then my VP asked me, okay, like we are considering Appium because we thought that it is a free tool, and then the Mac machine is what we need though, so it will cost around 45,000 rupees. Okay, 45,000 rupees it will cost. Okay, so now the decision is going to be purely based on if we really required to invest into the APM, how much money invest. It should always be, I mean, it should be less than what we are investing into the CTES at that point of time. Otherwise, there was no point in replacing CTES and taking all the scripts, migrating all of them into the Appium then. Okay. So then the calculation started. So 45,000 rupees. Then he asked me, okay, right now you are the lead of this automation team and you are working on. Now let's say we increase the team. Let's say tomorrow if we bring in a new person into the team. So does it mean that with every additional person into the team we need additional Mac to we need to purchase additional Mac? So that was the question. Then I again searched. So can we work parallelly, by installing Appium there on the Mac and then connecting to the device to it? So can two people work simultaneously and all. So that again the research I did. And then I said, no, there is no requirement of such, like as many devices can connect to the Mac machine. It just many ports, the number of devices we want to connect at a given point of time, and the people would be able to work parallel. So okay, then they said okay, that's fine. And that is how that POC went. Okay, so POC always goes on and around the investment. How much investment we need to put into the automation, and if it is worth, then only the you get the green signal. Otherwise, you don't get. Okay, so then the question was like, okay, Mac machine is fine, and then Appium, I had to do a lots and lots of research, and the blog which which I have shared you. So that blog I wrote after after I completed my research on that tool, and then I wrote it because this kind of an information was not at all available at that time. If somebody wants to get into the introduction of an Appium, so they were not having much resources available to them. And I had mentioned everything over there, like which will play an important part in the decision of the POC. I mentioned most of the things over there. You will not find anything about framework and all. The most of the things are about the the architecture of the APM and uh, the technical stuff of the related to that, which will help you in taking the right decision. Uh, that right. So there was one more point to this, that APM. The basically I had to understand the APM's architecture, and then I got to know that if you want to work with the iOS application with the help of APM, then you need to get that application signed with the developer provisioning profile. We will come to that point afterwards if required, but just understand the requirement here, that there was a requirement of getting that application signed with some certificate, right? That certificate, you I mean, it used to cost around from Apple. We need to buy that certificate, okay, from Apple, and we need to buy that certificate by paying them around $100 per year. Okay, so $100 per year we need to buy we need to pay to Apple in order to get that certificate. Then we will sign our application which we are planning to automate. We need to sign that application with that certificate, and then only automating with the APM is possible. So along with 45,000 rupees of Mac, this additional cost we had to incur, right? So around 6,000 rupees per year. It is going to be it is going to be a per year investment, okay, not one time. The Mac investment is the one time investment, that's fine, but this developer provisioning profile one is going to be a recurring investment, 6,000 rupees. So I have to again put this particular point in front of my VP there as a part of the POC. And after understanding all these things, then they calculated everything, like how much money we are investing right now, and how much money in terms of procuring the Mac, in terms of uh, the developer provisioning profile every year, how much money we need to invest into the CTES, APM, and then the decision was made to switch to APM. Okay, so the point is the hardware and software requirement plays very important role here when you are doing the POC of the automation tool. Then, like many times, if we are not very much clear about the architecture of the tool, then we may end up giving the wrong readings or wrong POCs to the customers and to the management. So I'll tell you one very important experience of mine related to this. It was not my experience. It was one of my students' experience. So I would like to mention here. So one of my
Ramnath,
student. Yes.
are you sharing something on the screen or?
No, not really,
Nothing
not
more.
really. I'm not doing anything. No, I'm not doing anything. I'm just discussing these things. I'm not showing anything there.
Okay, okay. Pranay, what was
Right.
that $100 for the certificate?
Okay, actually, it was the previously, not now. Now, if you want to use Appium now, it's not required, but it was previously. I'll tell you. When it comes to uh, Apple, okay, Apple doesn't give you anything for free, first of all. So basically, Apple has two kinds of developer provisioning profile and distribution provisioning profile. They are the certificates actually which you need to buy in order to sign your application, so that Apple will consider it as Apple specific app, or I mean Apple supported application. Okay, so if you want to put it to the Play Store, like the I mean App Store. So the way we have the Play Store for Android, Apple has App Store. So if you want to put your application on the App Store, so that the people will trust that application as an Apple application or iOS application. So if you want to have your application to be considered like that, you need to sign that application. You need to buy a provisioning profile from the application. You need to pay it to Apple, and you need to sign that application. Then only Apple considers that application as an Apple trusted application. Okay, so that is called developer provisioning profile. So every Apple developer need to buy it in order to, like, whenever he will build his or her application, and he wants it to be considered as Apple trusted application, and he want to put it on the App Store so that the people can start getting downloaded it, then you need to buy the provisioning profile from the Apple, and that provisioning profile costs around $100 per year. Okay, 6,000
Okay,
rupees.
okay,
And actually it is a requirement for the developers only, but because of the architecture of the Appium used to use one automation tool inside. I mean, one of the automation tool, it works, I mean it uses underneath, and this requirement was of that automation tool which the Appium uses underneath, and because of that it became the requirement for the Appium. So what I want to say here is that that is the reason why you know the architecture of the tool very well. It was, by the way, it was not the direct requirement of the Appium. It was the requirement of the automation tool which the Appium uses underneath. Because of that, it was an kind of an indirect requirement. It has become an indirect requirement for the Appium automation. Okay,
okay,
so you should know in and out of the tool in order to present the POCs. So that was the requirement of that tool, an indirect one for the Appium. So we have to mention it in the POC. Otherwise, our management would have said, you had said that Appium is free, and then you are, making us invest 45,000 Mac and 6,000 rupees per year. Then how can you say that the Appium is free? So it happens in the POCs. So POCs may, the tools may mislead you here. The tools don't, I mean, they may not be charging you the money for their licenses, but you may need to then invest into some kind of hardware or software requirements. But in order to know them, you need to know in and out of that automation tool. I mean, the architecture wise of that automation tool. So that was the requirement, and then but now it is not there now, because the Appiums, from iOS version 9 and onwards, Apple discarded that UI automation framework which they used to support. They came up with XUI test framework, and that XUI test framework doesn't require anything like this. So Appium also doesn't require anything else like this now. So,
okay,
I mean, so, but in order to understand this, you should know that what Appium uses underneath. Okay, even if we are only going to interact directly with the Appium, but that is not the one which we need to know. We need to know the other points as well about that too, like this, which will, which will, I mean, actually making over here. Right. Yeah, so I was talking about one of my student, they were doing the POC of Selenium, but C Sharp Selenium for their web application, and then he had to present the POC to the management, to the VP or CEO, I guess. So then the POC started. So then, I'll tell you that the CEOs, the VPs, they are more concerned about the investment they need to put in. Apart from that, they really don't care like what code you have written inside and what you have done inside, right? So they always that the questions which come from their side, they always in and around that investment over there. So the POC started, so he said we need a Microsoft Visual Studio for using Selenium with C Sharp and all that stuff. Because if you use C Sharp, the C Sharp compiler, like the way Java, we downloaded Java JDK and we set up the compiler, and Java C we compiled our program and stuff. But in case of C Sharp, the C Sharp compiler only comes along with the Microsoft Visual Studio. You do not have the C Sharp compiler available outside of it. So you need to buy, of course, Microsoft Visual Studio in order to write your scripts. Not only write, you can write the scripts in some editor, but in order to compile them using the compiler, you need a Microsoft Visual Studio. That is there. But then the CEO or that the manager asks, okay, Visual Studio we need, okay, that's fine, so and so, that's fine. Now he asks, okay, now we want to execute this test. Now see, in case of automation, there are two main segments here. One is the development environment and other one is the execution environment. Let's say you have a people of 10, and out of those 10 people, 2 people who are the seniors, they are going to develop the scripts, and let's say 8 others, they are only going to execute the tests. Now let's understand what is our hardware software requirement here in this case. Then if we want to absorb this team, then what is the hardware software requirement here? So like what he said is, the 10 people we have, so we need 10 licenses of Microsoft Visual Studio. And the things started getting okay. So he said, okay, 10 Microsoft Visual Studio licenses, so it will cost us a huge amount of money. Then what is the point in automation? Let's not do it. Let's continue with the manual testing. Now what was wrong in this POC? I'll tell you what was wrong. Basically, Microsoft Visual Studio or the compiler or the development kit, it is only required on the machines where you are going to write the scripts and compile the scripts. On the other 8 machines, you are only going to execute them. You are not going to have any compilation over there. Already compiled files, you are going to put it over there and you would be only simply going to execute it. Then why do you require the Microsoft Visual Studio over there on that 8 machines? Okay. So you only need Microsoft Visual Studio on the development machines and not on the execution. On the execution machine, you simply need .NET framework, which usually comes with the Windows operating systems. Like .NET framework comes with the OS integrated in the OS itself. Okay, so this was the wrong the POC, and that's why they couldn't start the automation. So he came to me and then he said, this is what I said and all. So I'll say, here you should be very clear about this. I mean, this architecture. Why do you require the Microsoft Visual Studio on those 8 machines? What are you going to do on that? Nothing, right? You're only going to simply those execution environment. So you need only execution environment. Why do you need Microsoft Visual Studio? Actually, you need only 2 Visual Studio licenses, and on those 8 machines, you just need .NET frameworks, which and it comes along with the OS itself, integrated into the OS itself. So what I'm saying is, if you give the wrong POC because of the lack of your understanding, that may have the larger impact on your projects. I mean, you will not get the project itself. So then, even if you are master of writing the framework, I mean, Doesn't make any difference there. You should be familiar enough about all these things in order to present the effective POC. The POC decides whether you are going to get the project or not. That's it. If you give the correct POC, your correct readings, the technical readings, then you will definitely get the project. Otherwise, the problems. Second instance. Okay, the second instance with the same person. Customer, like they started, they somehow started the using. I mean, they started using Selenium. I think with Java now then, because of the wrong reading from that person about the C sharp. So they started with Java. Okay, so they started with Java. Then they wrote the framework. Everything happened, and then one day customer told them to execute the scripts on Linux. Linux. The customer want the execution to be happening on Linux. Okay, then then what happened is, that person then again said, no, on the Linux we cannot do the execution because the code cannot be executed over there, here and there. So he told those things. Then he came to me maybe after a few days, and then he said, okay, this is what happened and this is what I said. Then I said, but in Selenium there is one component that is called remote WebDriver. In Selenium there is a component called remote WebDriver, which allows you to run the tests on the remote machine. You can still continue running your Java code or whatever code is, I mean the script code is on the Windows machine, where all the steps whatever you have written as a part of your script will get performed on that remote machine, whether that remote machine is a Mac machine, Linux machine, or whatever kind of machine. And he was not aware of this architectural point of that, and hence he gave a wrong reading over there. Okay, so that's the reason in any tool, the very important point, if you ask me, then it is the architecture of that, nothing framework, nothing else, right? So if you are very clear about how it works, then you can definitely give your reading. So if somebody asks you, okay, I want to run the tests on Safari browser, I want to run the Selenium tests, what should I do? So what people usually do, I'll tell you. What they do is, they get the Mac machine, that's fine, but then they along with the Safari browser over there and everything, they take up everything they require to run the Selenium tests on that Mac machine. They take Eclipse there, the Java there, and they port the whole scripts over there in order to get it executed over there. Why do we require this? If you use remote WebDriver, you have to just start one HTTP server over there, the Selenium server, and from Windows machine you can communicate with that server over there. It will start the driver, and the driver will interact with the browser for your tests, right? So you don't need any Eclipse and anything over there, right? Your script code will execute on the Windows machine, and it is communicating with that server running over there on the Mac machine to get the script statements executed over there. These things happen, and now if one of my students, she used to work with Pfizer, and they were doing the POC. I mean, they were working on Appium, and then she called me up, and then she said, Pranada, like, I want to run the tests on Mac machine over there, and now I'm facing challenges in getting the Eclipse setup on the Mac machine. So I asked her, why do you want Eclipse over there? Okay, you have to just start the Appium server over there, and you have to you have to mention the URL of the Appium server in your script. Your script will start communicating with that server, and that server will start interacting with the device attached to that machine. Why do you need Eclipse over there? Are you going to develop the scripts over there? No. So the development or the code is going to be executed, can remain executed on your Windows machine. You can you can establish an HTTP session with the server running over there, and you can get the execution done. So these things happen, and these are the very important points as far as the POC of the tool is concerned. I am telling you guys, the POC is one of the very important phase of any automation project. Okay, so the third point was the hardware software requirements. So it could be misleading for you. So you should have a very good understanding of these things in order to present the POCs. The fourth one, language, scripting language. Now, like when there were tools like WinRunner, the tools used to only support single language as a scripting language. Like WinRunner used to support, and those languages also used to be custom language. Like I mean, those languages only you can use with whenever you are working with that tool. They are not the the regular programming language. They used to be only a customized scripting language. I mean, the tools used to support only the customized scripting language that time. But now the tools have started supporting the regular programming languages as the scripting languages, starting with test complete, and test complete supports uh, JavaScript, C# script, C++ script. Then Selenium now supports more than one languages, and those are any customized language created only for Selenium. No, they are regular programming languages which the people are aware of. Right now, why do we need to uh, decide on this? What scripting language? Because that also can play a very important role in selecting the tools. One example I'll give you. When I was doing the POC for mobile automation tool, I mean, back in 2012 when we selected CTEST, the reason why we selected CTEST, I'll tell you. I came across one tool called Eggplant, Eggplant, Eggplant. It's still there. It's still there. You can search on the web. Eggplant, but then Eggplant supports SenseTalk, which is their own custom language. So we didn't go for Eggplant only because it supports custom language and not the well-known programming languages other. Why? The reason is absolutely simple. Like if we want to bring in the people in the team, we need to train them on Eggplant. On SenseTalk. Okay, if we go for the tool which supports first is more than one languages, so that we can have the choice to select from, and also if they are the well-known programming languages, then we don't need to train the people on those languages. That was the only point for which we didn't go for the Eggplant. Otherwise, there was a tough competition between Eggplant and CTEST actually when I was doing the POC. So then we selected POC because the CTEST, can be executed by integrating it with the test complete, and we already were using test complete at that time, so we were quite familiar with the test complete, VB script and all that. Hence we selected the CTEST. So language plays very important role. Second point, if that language requires you to have some investment into the hardware or software, like C#, for example. So if you select C# for writing your Selenium script, that's fine, but you need to get the Visual Studio. And the community edition of the Visual Studio is just the got introduced recently. I mean, in the recent past years. But prior to that, there was no community or free edition available for my Visual Studio. So there was no other option than to invest into the Microsoft Visual Studio, right? So the language also plays very important role in selecting the tool. Next is the platforms you want to work on. I mean, the whatever the application you want to automate. So on which platform you want to test it? On Linux, on Windows only, on Mac, or let's say currently you are having a web application right now, but then your company is planning for, or your customer, let's say, is planning for coming up with the mobile apps as well. So at the time of selection only, you should be selecting such tool which supports web as well as mobile. Okay, so that you don't have to again uh, select the tools and do the research and again doing the stuff right from scratch. So these things will save your time if you do the proper selection of the tool uh, at the initial days itself, right? So when you are selecting the tool. So these points, these 5-6 points which I just mentioned, they play very important role. And one more very important experience again, which I would like to share. I mean, that is what happens when you take the things for granted. Uh, I mean, again, the like okay, so they wanted to start the automation of that application, and then the manager asked, okay, what automation tool we should choose, and then like there is everywhere now Selenium, so you should Selenium. Even the application, like the website, if it has got some applets, applets windows to interact with, their applets and swings, these interfaces I just mentioned few minutes back, they are not the web interfaces. They are native interface, and Selenium doesn't work. I mean, WebDriver doesn't work with the native interfaces. So they said Selenium, let's use. And then I got a call that some of the elements are not getting identified and this and that. Then I asked, okay, which interface you guys are working on? So he said applets. So I said, no, applets interfaces you cannot identify using Selenium. Your application is not a web interface application, it seems. It's kind of an hybrid then, because some of the elements you are interacting with, they are native elements and some of them are web. Right, so you cannot directly jump to the conclusion after seeing the first screen of your application. Let's use Selenium. No, it's not like that. It's you have to have time for the POC. Okay, once you do the POC, the next phase is pilot project. Now, what is pilot project? Now, in the pilot project, what you do is like you take up some end-to-end scenarios to automate with whatever the application you have selected. Let's say you have selected Selenium, so you take up some end-to-end scenarios to automate, not with the framework or anything. Just you want to check whether the the tool identifies the elements correctly or not, whether each and every scenario we need to automate, whether there are any technical challenges into them. So you need to do the pilot project. So the POC only gives you the higher level idea about, okay, whether this particular after considering the licenses and other hardware software requirements and all that stuff, whether this tool is whether it is according to our requirements or not. So that higher level idea you will get it, but once you will actually start using it for the application you are planning to use it for, then if it has any technical challenges in, let's say, identifying any elements from that application, or automatic scenario of your test cases where you are required to do some end-to-end interaction with it. So is it having any technical challenges over there? And if there are any, then what are the what are the solutions for it? I'll give you one very important example with respect to this. We selected seed test, okay, and then we got to know, but like when we were into the pilot project, I was into that pilot project then after the POC. So we started the pilot project and we got to know about very important limitation of the seed test. Okay, so that then we out of it 3 asked them for the the trial license of 30 days, and we got on with the pilot project. I'm telling you the importance of the pilot project here, guys. Pilot project. Now, in the pilot project, I got to know about a very important limitation of the C test, and that was CTES used to communicate with the one of the client, one of the software or the agent. It is called as agent. So CTES installs the agent on the iOS device, and through that it communicates with the application under test. Okay, and that agent, what CTES used to do at that time is they used to give you the library of those agents. Okay, those agents you need to inject into your application's code. Like you have to ask your developers to include this agent libraries also in the application, and then build the application and then give us such a built application to us for automation, which is called as instrumentation. You are adding some external code into your application in order to make it automation enabled. That is called instrumentation. And that time when CTES was in its early days, so the instrumentation was required here. Okay, now please understand this very well. This is very good example of the pilot project here. So like then I understood all these things. Okay, and then I instructed my developer to do this. So I also helped them in getting this instrumentation done, and they gave us that particular instrumented IPA file, and then we started our pilot project. And then I got to know that whenever I am closing my application on the mobile, so it is losing the connection with the script running on my machine. And it was very obvious. Why? Because the communication of my script, like my script used to communicate with the agent over there, and agent actually does the operation on the application, and that agent is integrated into the application code itself now. So hence the application, once the application is closing, agent is also getting closed, and then we cannot automate anything. We cannot interact with the device anymore from that point. We need to have that agent running in order to get the things interacted over there. And this became very important point for us. How? Because we were having few test cases where we are required to close the application, change some proxy settings or something on the device, and then run the same test case again. So here, for few test cases, we wanted to have the interaction with the device screen as well, and not on the application. We need to close the application, have the interaction on the settings of the device, change it, and again launch the application and continue with the test case. Now this kind of test cases we, because we were not able to take the full control, UI automation control over the device, because of this architectural limitation of the tool. So I brought this to the notice of my management that okay, this is how it works. And then if we close that application, as the application's libraries are instrumented into our application's code, so if I close our application, okay, the connection is getting lost, obviously, because that agent is closed. Once you up the application again the connection can be established. But then because of this, we won't be able to automate such test cases where we are required to have the full control on the device. This is the importance of pilot project, guys. Okay, so the pilot project gives you some more understanding of that tool while you are using it for some scripts over there, and then you got to know about some. Now this kind of a limitation, you don't get to know about it when you are into the POC phase. That something you only get to know about when you are actually now trying some hands-on with the application you are working on. So pilot project is very important, very important here. So you do some changes here. Like we had asked our developers to set the IDs to our controls, right? So there were no IDs set or no name set when we started with the Selenium for our Angular JS based application. So everything was like div. And we have an algorithm, like we have written one algorithm in our framework which creates the checkpoints for you. I'll tell you about that. But for that we need to have some changes to be done in the on the application side. So we then in the pilot project itself we brought this to the notice to our developers, and then we got those changes done, and then we worked, right? So pilot project plays very important role. Now for the pilot project, you should have a good understanding of the UI automation tool, how it works actually. Now when you are running when you are executing your test cases manually, how do you execute it on the interface? So what you do is, like, the test case is written like click on 7, click on plus, click on 7, click on equal to, and see that 14 is working. So this is how the steps are written. So when we execute these steps manually, what do we first, what do we do first? We read the step and we understand which control we need to work on and what kind of interaction we need to do. And then we look at the interface, and then we first try to identify the control which has been referred to in the step. Okay, so if there is if there are two buttons having the 7 as its text, then I will get definitely will get confused, right? If there are two OK buttons and my test case is saying me to click on the OK, then I'll definitely will get confused. Okay, which OK button you are talking about, this or this, right? So unique identification of the element is very important when it comes to UI automation. Also, like when it comes to UI testing for that matter, like even if you're doing it manually or automatically, still the identification of the controls on the interface plays very important role. So you first identifies the control, and then you do the required interaction with it. The same thing happens with the tool. Okay, the same thing happens with the tool. When you ask any UI automation tool, whether it is Selenium, QTP, TC, whatever, you have to give it the information about the control you want it to interact with. Okay, so if I want my UI automation tool to click on this 8, so I need to provide a identification information of this control to my tool. So in what ways I can provide that information in? So there are three ways, guys. There are three ways to provide an identification information to the tool. One is image. So what I can do is I'll tell my tool that, okay, please take the snap of this 8 button, the button which is displaying 8, take a snap. So I'll ask it to take a snap. That tool will save, and whenever my tool, as a part of my script step, whenever my tool will go to the click on that 8, first what it will do, it will retrieve the snap from storage. It will come in here on the UI, and it will try to match that snap with the controls available over here, and to whatever control that snap or that image will match, it will identify that control as the desired control, and then it will work on it. This is called image based identification. The way, if I want to identify some person from the group, any person from the group, so if somebody gives me the photo of the person, so what I'll do, I'll just see that photo, I'll go to the group, and I'll just try to match the face of everyone present over there with the photo I have, and whichever person's photo will the face will match to the photo I have, I'll consider that person as an expected one. This is called image based identification. Now image based identification follows very strict comparison rules. What I mean by that, let's say I have a photo of a person. So I have a photo of that person, then I went there to identify that person, and let's say that person has got a pimple now on his cheek, and in that photo I do not have it, like that person doesn't have it. So I will not be able to identify that person, because there is a change in the way he looks right now and the way he or she looks in the photo, right? So strict comparison is there. That's why we ruled out the image identification actually works very strict here. I mean, you can still mention the tolerance and all, but still it is not that much reliable. Okay, so that's why when we were doing the POC for the tool, we ruled out the Sikuli option because the Sikuli does the image-based identification, and even if you change the theme of your machine, and the controls of your application starts looking differently, and then if you have the image identification done, then your script will not be able to identify the controls because there is a huge difference now in the way that the controls are being displayed and the way you have them in your images. Your which tool is using to identify them. And C-test used to only support image identifications when we started using it because that C-test was not much mature at that time. So it was only supporting image identification. And we have automated our scripts, no, initial few scripts with the image identification at that time. And then, like, when the OS gets upgraded, like Android, say, we have started, I guess, from Android 3 or 4, I guess, automation on Android application. So when we used to upgrade that OS, the controls now have started displaying differently. Then our test used to fail because the images which we have, we have got for those, and the way the controls are been displayed right now, they are different. So C-test, it was not able to find those elements, right? So image-based identification is quite dicey. The next is the way you can provide the identification information to the tool is properties of that control. Okay, the way any human being, along with you can use the photo of that person to identify, that's image based, but you can identify that person based on his or her unique as well, their height, then whether that person has specs or not. So whatever the bunch of attributes which stands out that person from the group, so those attributes you can make use of to identify that person. So physical attributes. But the point is, we need to have, there are two very important points we need to know here. First, whatever the properties we are using to identify that person, those should not be changed frequently. They should not be rather changed. But even if it is a possibility of getting those properties changed, that occurrence should not be much frequent, right? That is first. Second, the property using the single of properties identify that person uniquely. Unique identification is very important. Now, if there is one group standing out there, and if somebody says that, okay, please give this message to that person, so I'll ask, okay, which person you are talking about? So let's say that person says, okay, the person who is male. So I'll just have a look at that group, and if there are more than one male standing out there, I will not be able to understand whom he is talking about. So then I'll ask him some more properties. So he'll say, okay, that person's height is 6 feet. So I have got now two attributes here of that person. One is gender male and height is 6 feet. Now using these two properties, I'll try to understand whether I'm able to identify that person now uniquely or not. If I'm able to identify, then I don't need any further information about him or her. Him rather now, right now. So I'll just go and give him the whatever the message I want that other person to give him. On the following day, now if he says that, okay, again go and give him the this particular message. Now again I'll go. Now he has given me those attributes. Now again I'll try to you know identify that person based on the attributes which that person had told me, and then I'll try to identify that person again, right? So now here, when I'm going on the following day, and I have got these two attributes should again match to that person. If I have got the two attributes, out of the two, one is matching, the other one is not, then I won't be able to identify that person. Let's say the person says like he is 6 feet then gender, male, and he has worn the red shirt. And using these three attributes, I am now able to identify that person uniquely. That's fine. But on the following day, if he comes with the different color shirt, then out of these three attributes, two are matching, but one is not, then I will not be able to identify that person. I'll come back and I'll say person not found. That is what happens with UI automation tools, guys. I had mentioned you at the start of this session that UI automation scripts, they are they work very closely with your interface. Even the slightest change. Now there is one attribute here called XYZ, okay, using which you are identifying this element. Now even if that attribute's value gets changed, manual tester doesn't have any impact of it, but automation tool can have. Okay, if that tool is using that attribute value for identifying that element for the interaction, and if there is any change introduced to that, then automation tool will have the impact. Getting it, guys? So automation tools, I mean UI automation tools, to be very specific, they are very tied with the interface what you have of your application. And the slightest change, that the change could be related to the element under question. So the way any person has the attributes like gender, height and all, the controls, whenever the designer designs the control, so he also sets some properties. Some of the properties are responsible for giving the look and feel to the control, or some of the properties are also responsible for giving the behavior to the control. So while they are designing the interface and every element from that interface, the designer sets some attributes or sets some properties. Okay, so out of those properties, we have to just pick up those which are uniquely set and which are using, I mean, which will not be changed very frequently. Okay, so we need to just find those things, like whenever we are giving this information to the control, to the tool about the control, the properties, that is called native identification. So if you are giving the information about the unique properties of the controls to the tool, and tool is using those attributes or properties to identify the control before it goes ahead with the interaction, then you are doing native identification. And there is very important third way is relational identification. Now what is meant by relational identification? Okay, let's say that person's I mean displaying looks may change based on the I mean if he gets a pimple or anything, the looks may get changed. Let's say his shirts and his clothes also, I mean he is changing very frequently. So neither the native identification is helping me in identifying that person, nor the look of that person is helping me in identifying that person uniquely. But there is one more, I mean, way I can identify the person is based on the relationship he has or he observes with the other person I know. Okay, let's say somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's sister, somebody's brother. So as long as that relationship, even if that person has changed his, he has got the plastic surgery and changed his look, that's fine. Then he has changed his native attributes also, that's fine. But as long as that relationship is intact, I can identify that person. That is called as relational identification. And in the UI automation, this is also very important, that identification is not only native. Now usually uh, people talk about IDs, name and all that stuff for identifying the elements, but they are native identifications. But we can make a powerful use of the relational identification in UI automation, and that is where actually the XPath comes into the picture. Usually I have seen that people use XPath for anything. I mean, even if there is an ID set, Still people will write the XPath // @ID equal to this. Why not to use find element by ID there? So XPaths are not for this kind of scenarios, guys. XPaths are very specific and they are very powerful technique where you are required to use relational identification, following sibling, preceding sibling, ascendant, descendant, ancestor, parent, child. So when you are required, whatever the information is available with you for finding the elements, if it is not sufficient for you to get to that element required, then you have to use relational identification, and there actually the power of XPaths can be used. They are not, literally I have seen such frameworks where the XPaths are used like anything. Okay, well, in the interviews also we sometimes ask, okay, I have the ID and what technique you will use. They say XPath // @ID equal to this. Okay, if it was the case, then we wouldn't have asked our developers to set the IDs or names. Okay, I'll tell you in the pilot project of our web application. Uh, I was doing the pilot project, and I said, like, when I see this application, I inspected. Then I can see that all the controls, like when it comes to the DOM, all the controls are similar. Like group control is also div, table control is, tab control is also div, panel is also div, everything is div. How are you supposed to identify the elements uniquely? Because in UI automation, unique identification plays very important role here. Now we were also be able to write the XPath. There was no doubt about that. We were, we knew the XPaths are there, but we never told this to our developers. Okay, we have an option to this. So we said, no, we cannot do this because we do not have any unique attribute set. So then the developers, we had a meeting with the developer. Like I had a meeting with him, and then he asked me, okay, what is the problem, this, that. Then I explained him how the UI automation tool works. And like if the like UI automation scripts are very closely connected to the interface. So if there is any change, if you do any change into the attribute or any other element which is in the parent or child hierarchy of it, then the things can go wrong. And the unique identification plays very important role in the UI automation. So that's why we need something which is uniquely set to the element. So then we said, okay, which attribute then you want us to set? So I cannot say class attribute. Why? So you should have a bit understanding of that interface design technology as well. Why can't I say, like, whereas in Selenium we do have find element by class name. But why can't I tell it to him that please set the class attribute to something unique? Why? Because class attributes are usually the attributes which refers to the cascading style sheets from the web application, and they cannot set it to anything which we want it to set. Okay, there are some attributes which actually, like if we set them, they have the impact on the either on the behavior of the control or on the display of the control. So such attributes they cannot set to, right? Like class, type, they cannot change this because the type is the attribute which gives the behavior to the control, whereas class is the attribute which is the reference to the cascading style sheet, which is responsible for giving the look and feel to the control, which they cannot change. So then which attributes we should ask them to change? We can ask them to change any attribute which we can use in our scripts. Like for example, in Selenium we have find element by ID. So that ID API, find element by ID API is what allows us to use the ID attribute for finding the element. Now can they set to any value? Now this is what we need to understand, guys. While being an automation tester, you should be you should be a thorough technical person. I'm telling you this. Like the man, when it comes to the automation, you should have a very good understanding of the interface design technology as well. I mean the fair understanding, not at the level which the designers or the developers has, but the fair amount of understanding by which you can answer the questions of the developers. So the ID attributes. So what does the ID name attributes are? They are actually, the ID name attributes are actually set for the unique identification. The purpose of the setting them is the unique only, not because the Selenium has it. No, it's not like that. Basically, any application, a web application, it has got some client-side validations implemented. Like developers implement some. Let's say I have an email field, and if I enter the value into it, so when I submit that page, if that email ID is not in a proper format, then application immediately gives me the message, email is not valid. So this, whether it is valid or not, the logic of this checking, verifying is written in the client side itself, inside that page itself. They don't send the data to the server, and the server doesn't validate this. Client side validation they are called as, because this thing gets validated for at the client side. And for implementing the client side validations, developers, what do? Whatever the element we have entered the text in and they want to verify it from, they identify that element from the DOM, okay, using JavaScript. And then in the JavaScript, they identify the element, they retrieve the value, and then they have the logic they want to verify this value against, and then accordingly we get the errors. So as a part of their client-side validations, they are also required to identify the elements uniquely. And JavaScript uh, has a get element by ID and get element by name in the JavaScript itself. That's why if any client-side validations are developers, they do set ID or name, because those are the only two attributes. They can rely on to identify uniquely as a part of their client-side validations implementations. That's why they set ID and name, and you can set ID and name to any value, because it doesn't have any impact either on the display of the control or on the behavior of the control, right? That's why ID and name you guys can ask it to set it to like any value to them. You cannot ask but the class or type or any other which actually has an impact on the display or the behavior of the control, right? So ID name, and Selenium does have it. Like you should always be asking to set such an attribute to the unique value which doesn't have any impact on on the behavior or the display of the control. And you also, in whatever the tool you are using for automation, you have a way to use that attribute for finding the elements. Find element by ID, find element by name. That is what we see in the Selenium, right? So all these things are the part of pilot projects. You can ask, like we had asked our developers who, like if they had not given us, we had a way to use XPath and all, but no guys, remember XPaths are very slow in performance. They have to parse the entire DOM. Like it's like I'm asking it to search for my house in entire Pune city. It's like that. So it will take it will take a time, right, to find my house in the entire Pune city, right? So if you're asking it to find an element in the entire DOM, it has to search the entire DOM in order to get to that element. So it's a query language. XPath is not for finding the element. It's a query language. The way we have SQL query language to retrieve the data from the relational databases, tables, Oracle, SQL queries and all. So it's a query language. So XPath is a query language like that, which allows you to retrieve the data from documents like XML or HTML documents. If you want to retrieve the data, then the XPath is the query language for that purpose. And then the automation tools are support, like they have implemented it for the requirement of the identification, but actually its use is querying the DOM and retrieving the data from it. So it's quite slow in performance. That's why if you have ID, name, you should go for those attributes for finding the elements. If you are if you are required to use such an attribute which is uniquely set, that's why you have chosen it, but for which you do not have any find element by strategy available, for example type attribute, type equal to submit, and if I want to use it in my Selenium script but Selenium doesn't have any find element by type like I mean attribute API available, then you should go for CSS. You should go for CSS selector. Okay, XPath when you want to use relational identification. Give me following sibling of this. Give me preceding sibling of this. Give me parent of this, child of this, like that. And we are going to have a comprehensive session on XPath, guys. We are going to learn how to write our own XPath. I have seen people are using XPath and they are retrieving it from some what XPath tools or something like copy XPath, paste XPath. No, we are going to learn the XPath query language and we have a dedicated section on XPath. We will see how to write XPath. If I want to use the relational identification, then how can we use the power of XPath in that case? So we are going to see that. Right? Okay, now having said this, after we understood the different things about the automation and all, and I mean because of these free automation tools now, Selenium, Appium and all, now automation you can see everywhere now there is automation, even if it is a small project, it doesn't have a much budget, or the bigger projects are also are there. Like I mean I have seen the companies, I have worked with the companies who can afford the license tools, no doubt about that, but they want to save the money on them, obviously. Like SQS is a company I had few students from that SQS as well, where they wanted to replace QTP. I mean SQS at one point of time SQS was having investment of 3.5 crores in QTP licenses. Now they replaced QTP with Selenium. I mean that is what are also going on. Wipro as well. Wipro were also using Appium. I had few students from there that they wanted to replace C-test with Appium. They were using C-test and they wanted to save cost on C-test by replacing it with Appium. Right? So the thing started moving in that direction. Like after people started accepting these tools. Right? Now let's understand. Like I have already mentioned about this, I will be giving you this file where I have mentioned the most of the things which we have discussed today, and also the blogs also you have. But now let's concentrate on Selenium architecture. Otherwise I have mentioned everything over there, like whatever we discussed about UI automation. So Selenium architecture. Now some of you had mentioned about Selenium IDE, Integrated Development Environment, Selenium IDE, which used to support, like I should not say used to because it is still there, but I'm saying used to because people don't use IDE now. Now there is a reason for it. The IDE IDE, actually IDE Integrated Development Environment of Selenium, it supports automation of scripts. It supports scripts using Selenium commands. Selenium commands, like if you the people who have worked with Selenium IDE, they might know that, right? When you record the script, the script gets recorded in terms of send keys, click, and all that. These are called Selenium commands. That is proprietary language for Selenium. Okay, they are only the commands. You cannot have any programming done over there in between the steps. Like if I want if, while, or any programming constructs, I cannot use that in Selenium commands. It's only for the basic purpose of the automation actually, right? But like they started with ID because the initial focus was only to replace the human effort with some robot kind of effort, where like automation effort. So the focus was not in on initial focus was not on about writing some comprehensive automation tool. The focus was only to replace the donkey work. So it was created only with these commands like clicks and keys, which will save you an effort of interaction, right? But the disadvantage, as you know, like it doesn't support scripts. Okay, like writing scripts in programming languages. And initially the IDE was only supporting Firefox browser. Now it is supported on other browsers as well. But initially I mean, it was only supporting Firefox browser. Now they thought of like, okay, now we should like, I mean, they have started using it quite a well, and now they are asking to support Selenium for other browsers, as well as the people like, they are looking at Selenium as an option to other automation tools available out there in the market, like PC, WinRunner and all. They wanted the Selenium to be an option for them, where they can really write a comprehensive framework and comprehensive automation they wanted to do with the Selenium. But Selenium was not supporting any programming language, and also the support of the IDE was only limited to the Firefox. Then they came up with Selenium RC. Okay, Selenium remote control, and now the main feature they wanted to introduce into the RC, like whatever the ID was suffering from these two major disadvantages of not supporting the programming languages and not supporting the browsers as well. Now they wanted to introduce those things into the RC. So they started supporting the automation, I mean the different programming languages, there in the RC, and also the browsers also, like different browsers also they wanted to support with the introduction of the RC. So how did they make all these things possible? Like in the architecture, what did they do in order to start this support? That's what I will just like to explain here. Now the Selenium commands like find element by ID, find element by name, class name, text, send keys, click, people are already aware of, right? The people were already aware of these things when they were using the ID. They wanted to stick to the same conventions. Like when it comes to learning any UI, any automation tool, the major learning curve is into understanding the API of that tool. Like how should I click, which function I should call to find the elements, which functions I should use to enter the text and stuff like that. So main, the learning curve, the major learning curve is into understanding the API of that automation tool. So they didn't want to introduce any learning curve. With the introduction of the RC, they wanted to stick to the same conventions like find element by ID, name, and all. So they implemented all this in different programming languages, and they build the libraries. Actually, they build the libraries. Find element by ID, find element by name, send keys, and all. They build the libraries in different languages like Java, C Sharp, Python, JavaScript, and all. And they build the libraries. They distributed those libraries to the people, and people then started, like whoever wants to send the keys, like type, they will all this. That is what the convention typing operation. Click, they will call the click method from the given library if they want to click, because that is what the convention they are used to. Right, so they stick to the conventions, but all these LNS commands they implemented in different programming languages and build the libraries and distributed those libraries to the people. So people got an option of writing a script in any language they are familiar with. Okay. Next, on the other hand, they wanted the support for other browsers as well. Now the question is how to make this possible in RC. So basically our script, whatever the interactions are required to be performed, clicks, send keys in the form of clicks, send keys and all, those APIs we will call in our script. Okay. Now when I will run the script, this particular operation is required to be performed inside the browser, obviously, because the browser runs the application, and if I want the click to happen, that click should get exercised inside the browser. Okay, but our script, whatever we write, it is outside of the browser. It is outside the browser in my Eclipse or IDE or on my machine, right, running somewhere. And the instruction is written in the script. It is required to be executed inside the browser. So how can we make this possible here? That's the something where the instruction is written is outside of the browser, but the execution of that instruction should be inside. Right? How to make this scenario happen? So what they did is, like, you can write your script anywhere in any language like C Sharp, Java, Python, whatever. But ultimately, this instruction is required to be executed inside the browser. So there it should get executed. I mean, that particular code of that instruction should get executed inside the browser for typing, clicking and all. So it should get executed there. But browser doesn't allow any programming language to be executed inside other than JavaScript. Only JavaScript can be executed inside the browser. Like if you want to write a program for let's say calculating the addition of 10 numbers and you want to execute it inside the browser, you need to write it in the JavaScript. Why? Because, like, as you know, that Java, Python and all these languages, they need a runtime environment to get executed. And any programming language, if you want to write a code in and want to execute, it needs a runtime execution environment. The browsers has only JavaScript runtime engines integrated, guys. Okay, you cannot write a Python program and inject it into the browser because browser doesn't have the runtime environment to run the Python. C Sharp you can run because in the Microsoft browsers only, like Internet Explorer and all. But if you are targeting the most of the browsers like Chrome, Firefox, then all these browsers can only, no other language can be executed inside, right? So the point is, like, if I have written my instruction of click in C Sharp it is, or in Java it is, and now we are talking about it getting executed inside the browser, but browser can only execute the JavaScript, so how can it be done then? So what they did is they implemented a translator. What it will do, the source language could be any. For click operation, the source language could be Java, could be C Sharp, could be Python, whatever. Ultimately, it would be translated into the JavaScript, and then it will get injected in that inside the browser. And once that translated, JavaScripts will get executed inside the browser. The interaction would be taken place. So the RC server, now you can see here the explanation here. Like I'll say in the Java, I'll say find element by name, q.send case. So this find element by name and all this is implemented in Java language. Now it has to be executed inside the browser. For that it has to be translated. So translate Selenium APIs. So there is a translator, RC server, which is a translator which translates your Selenium API calls like find element by name, send keys and all into the pure JavaScript. This is a JavaScript, a corresponding JavaScript. For this statement, this is the corresponding or equivalent JavaScript. So it will translate this into this JavaScript and will inject it inside the browser. So here it will be injected and it would be executed there and it will run. Now there is a problem, the architectural limitation here. Now that is why I always keeps on emphasizing on understanding architecture. Why? Now you will understand this. Now there is an architectural limitation here for this. I'll tell you what that limitation is. Now what happens is, like, you write the scripts in Java, C Sharp, whatever, then the translation happens in the JavaScript, and that JavaScript gets injected into the browser, and there it gets executed in the engine, okay, which is integrated inside the browser. Now browser, when any browser runs any program inside the browser, it that program, whatever you have written and executing inside the browser, it has got some restrictions. Now what kind of restrictions I'm talking about here? Like in that program, you can only, if you want to access anything, okay, if you want to access anything, if you have any computational logic, that's fine, 2 plus 2 4 and all. But if you want to access anything, you can only access the page running inside the browser. You cannot access the file system. Like you cannot write a program to create a file and inject it into the browser. You cannot access the file system. Browser will say, oh, no, you cannot access the file system. If that was possible, then anybody would have written a program to delete all the files from your machine and would have injected into your browser. And if the browser allows it to get executed, you will have free from all the files, right? So browser doesn't allow that. Browser allows the JavaScripts to be executed, but with limited access, and it can access only the page running or open in the browser. Now because of this limitation, now if you have a test case where you want to change the proxy in the browser or setting in the browser, some setting you want to do, and then you want to run the test case. Now Selenium doesn't have any API for setting the proxy in the browser. Why? It's really easy, because if that if it translates it into the JavaScript, and that JavaScript, if it tries to access some setting from the browser will stop it. Oh, no, you cannot access anything other than the page. You cannot access the browser settings, you cannot access anything. Okay, you are only allowed to access the page. That's the reason using Selenium RC you cannot automate the scripts where you require to have the full control. Full control means not only on the page but also on the browser. You should be able to do some settings in the browser, you should be able to load some browser profiles and stuff like that, which was not possible because of this, guys. And the disadvantage is because of the architecture of the Selenium RC. That's why it was the case, right? So the disadvantage was like we cannot take control over the browser. We can only interact with the UI elements on an application. That was the major, along with the other disadvantages. Let's not get into that, because for our case, the main disadvantage which the RC was suffering from this, we cannot take full control in our automation. We can only control the application but not the browser. It may happen that as a part of our test case we need to do something over there as well, which we were not able to do, and hence the WebDriver came, the one which we are now going to learn, WebDriver. Now how WebDriver solved this issue? Okay, how in the architecture, what change they introduced, because of which this basically the disadvantage they handled, and they now we are able to in Selenium scripts we can not only take control on the page but we can take control on the browsers as well now. I can change the setting of the browser in case in proxy. In Firefox I can load the different profiles and stuff like that. So it's not the testing interaction is not only limited to the application now. It is now extended to the browser as well, the interactions. Now how it is made possible? Let's understand. Every browser, whether it is Chrome or Firefox or what Edge or IE, it comes with a UI automation library. Means it comes with the set of functions calling which you can take the programmatic control on those browsers. Like you can set the proxy, you can set the profiles and all. Okay, so you can automate the applications as well as you can automate the whole browser as such, right? Now, what they have done is the people are still, they are familiar with send keys and click and all that stuff. So they didn't want to introduce again any change into the conventions the people are used to use. So they wanted to stick to those conventions. Like when it comes to typing, people know send keys. When it comes to click, people know click. They didn't want to change any conventions over there. But the UI automation library of the browser comes with a different API calls. Like let's say for Chrome, typing is set text. So if I want to use the Chrome UI automation API and automate my application, so for typing I need to call set text and send in the text which I want to get typed in. But if I want to have it for Firefox, Firefox has got a different UI automation APIs where for the typing they have given enter text. For Edge, it is type text, let's say. So every browser has got their own UI automation library. So if we want to use it for automating our applications, then we have to learn each and every browser's UI automation library. For Chrome, what is there for typing in the Chrome? Okay, set text. Then we have written the script for by using the Chrome UI automation API. We have written the script. We are running it. Now we want to run it on Firefox, but we have to rewrite it again. We have to rewrite it using the Firefox native automation API. The same if I want to get it executed on Edge, I have to do it again for the Edge using the Edge UI automation API, right? So UI automation APIs of the browser, they do allow us to take the full control, like control on the browser as well as the application. But each and every browser's UI automation API library is different, which will require you to write your scripts multiple times. Once using Chrome's UI automation API to run it on Chrome. The same using Firefox automation API to run it on Firefox. Okay. So now what they have done is, like now they wanted to leverage this advantage of using the UI automation library of the browser, but on the other hand, they didn't want to introduce any extra effort on the automation side. So what they did is they wrote the translators. Okay. So what I mean by that, I'll still say in my test send keys. Okay, I'll still say because that is what I understand from the typing operation as an UI Selenium automation developer. Send keys. Okay, so that's it. The Chrome has set text for the Chrome's UI automation API has set text for typing. Okay, but I don't need to know that. I know send keys. So I will, I will write my test in the language which I understand, send keys, click, find element by ID, which I will send it to the translator. One translator we will bring in between. So that translator is the one who understands the language send keys, click, and who also understands the language set text and all the API of Chrome. And it will take care of translating it into the Chrome's native automation API in order to get it worked on Chrome. So it's like I can understand Marathi language, I don't understand any other language, and I want to communicate with some person who doesn't understand Marathi and I don't understand his language. Okay, so there is only one way, that I have to bring in one person in between who will be able to translate for us. So I'll speak in my native language Marathi, he will then translate it into Tamil what that other person understands and he will give it to him or her. And then that person will respond back in his or her native language, and then that translator will translate it back into my native language. So here we want to be able to communicate in our own native language without understanding anybody else's language, right? So that translator, as long as he is able to understand the languages of both of us, we will be able to continue communicating in our own native languages, right? That is what happens here. So I'll talk in Zenkeys and all, but the browser has the corresponding different APIs. So Chrome has set text for for typing. So I'll set send keys. It will come to the Chrome driver for the translation, and the Chrome driver will translate into the UI automation API call from the Chrome's UI automation APIs. Now I want to run the same test on the different browser. Okay, the way like I was communicating with the Tamil guy, so we had a translator in between who understands Tamil and Marathi. Now I want to communicate with the guy who understands Kannada. So I will just change the translator, but I'll still speak in my own language. And he is the person who understands my language as well as that other guy's language, right? So that is what we do. So if I want to run the test, what we do? We don't change the test. We translate. And that is what the Firefox does. Now I'll be pinging in the Firefox driver, and all the send keys and all would be sent to it for the translation, which will translate it into the what UI automation API that Firefox browser has. And that is the reason we get the drivers, guys. And I have seen like people get the driver, but what they do, they don't know what the drivers are actually doing there. They are nothing but the translators. Okay. Now, if you want to execute the test, like when the Selenium driver started, they implemented the Firefox driver. They implemented this initially. So they implemented all these things. They finalized the specification. Okay, what all Selenium compatible drivers should be able to do, and they created the specification, and they handed over this specification to the people who are interested in writing the drivers compatible to the Selenium. So the Chrome driver, Selenium team has not developed the Chrome driver. Google has developed the Chrome driver. Edge driver, Microsoft has developed the Edge driver now by implementing the specification there. Okay, so drivers, Chrome driver. Now the Firefox driver is not used. Now there is a Gecko driver for the newer Firefox, because the Firefox implementation itself got changed from version 45 and onwards. So the Firefox, the older Firefox got scrapped, and then the new Firefox implementation came, and then the Gecko driver Mozilla implemented. The Selenium people has not implemented the drivers. They don't implement the drivers anymore now. They have written the specification. So if you want the the Selenium APIs compatible automation you want to happen on the browser, you just implement the specification and create the driver. It will make the translation, right? So you can still write your Selenium tests in these languages like send keys, click, and all. Got it, guys? So that's why it's very easy for Selenium to extend the support. Like if tomorrow, if I write my own browser, like say XYZ browser, and I have got my UI automation API as well of the browser, so somebody just need to invest the effort into writing the driver, like implementing the specification provided by the Selenium, which will like that driver will take care of them translating send keys into my browser's UI accounts. This is how easy it is for Selenium to go on extending the support for different browsers. And that is the only reason, guys, I'll tell you the Selenium is so popular, just because of this architecture, nothing else. It makes you very easy. Like you in Appium also, you can write the tests in the same way you write your tests in Selenium. By just looking at, you cannot even recognize whether it is Selenium test or Appium test, because the same API calls are there. Send keys, find element by ID, and this, that. And that's why people, the organizations who want to go for the automation of mobile applications, they go for Appium, because there is, for the people who already know the Selenium, they do not have any learning curve over there, because API is absolutely similar. Got it, guys?
Yes, sir. Sir, how
what
to
is this all
decide?
about? Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Sir, how to decide which language we should use with Selenium, whether to use Java or Python or any other?
Okay, it depends upon. Okay, now the choice depending upon user community. Like when it comes to the language, the user community should be fine. When it comes to Python, Python is good language, no doubt about that. But if you see the user community is still not that much big enough. Like if you get stuck somewhere, like while developing or doing something, you should get the answers from the user community available out there in the world. That is first. Second, set of libraries available. I mean, if I want to read the Excel from Java, from my code, for example, I should have the libraries, third-party libraries. So enough third-party libraries. Python is good, but the Python's usage is more in like data processing and all, machine level and all there, like it is more there, like NumPy array, and it has got some dedicated libraries for those things. But when it comes to Selenium, still Java Selenium is on the upper hand, because huge libraries are available on the npmrepository.com for usage. Then you do not have to have any license tools procure. You don't need to do any investments into it as of now. I mean, until that there is no requirement. And user community is also huge. I have never faced any issue. Like if we did, I may tell you like what all implementations we have done. Like we have implemented our own checkpoints as well. And lot of things we did. But then we never faced any issue in terms of user community support as well as the library support. So Java is still on the higher side when it comes to Selenium or automation, I'll say. But when it comes to the data processing and all, so Python is on the higher level there, because they have the dedicated libraries for it. R language, Python language, so that is for that. It's more for that actually.
Yes.
But Java is still on the on the higher side. Even for the Appium as well, Java is it's still on the higher side.
Yes, sir. Got it.
So you should always go for such language which is which will give you a good amount of community support. Also the set of libraries for different purposes.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Hello, brother Ruchit here.
Sorry, hello.
Ruchit here.
Yes, Ruchit. Yes.
Yeah, so actually sometimes what happens that we test on specific browsers. Suppose we test on Chrome, but later that they tell us to test it on other browsers as well. So this change, because of this change, do we have to make many modification into the script, or there are certain minor modifications?
No, they are minor, of course, but still there are, and it all. And I mean, what amount of efforts you guys are need to invest into it? It entirely depends upon what kind of framework you have. I mean, what kind of abstractions and reusability you guys have implemented in your framework. That actually will decide how much effort you guys indeed, if you are required to invest any effort, then how much it would be. That depends entirely upon how strong you have your framework. When we will talk about the framework, I'll tell you what I usually find in case of framework, and then what best we can do in order to reduce such kind of efforts. There are changes, no doubt about that. When it comes to typing, sometimes it happens that using Selenium's send keys, the text will not get typed, but you need to use then robot class or maybe some actions class for certain browsers. It happens. It happens in case of IE, though it happens, right? Okay. So how much effort then you need to put in, that entirely depends upon, seriously speaking, your framework. How much how you have used Java. Have you used it from its strength or not? And that actually decides how much effort you guys are really required to put into these things. We will come to that one because we have not yet reached. See, I have a lot of things to talk about on framework. I'm seriously speaking, because the framework which I usually see, and the framework which the kind of framework which we have here, and what kind of advantages we are then getting out of it. So I have a lot of things to talk about on these things, but we will talk about it once we will start with the framework.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Yes, guys. So, this is what I just wanted to cover in our today's session because
Uh,
this is really important. Yes,
Pranode,
yes.
you were mentioning like how do you go about deciding the automation tools and all, right? So
Automation, sorry, automation.
how to select automation tool and what kind of factors that we need to consider
Ah,
before we consider that, right? So
hmm.
I think I've noted till scripting language. What was the last point that you have mentioned? So they were like,
Scripting,
what is the interface, which tool to select, and then there were hardware and software. Then there was a scripting language. There was
correct.
one more point, right?
Uh, Hardware, software requirement, and platforms. Platforms you want to, test your applications on. Means only Windows you want to test it on, or you want to test it on the Mac as well.
Okay.
So that was the point actually. And also types of applications you are targeting. Like in the future, in the near future, are you coming up with any mobile application? The same application, are you going to port it to some mobile platforms as well? That also is very important.
Okay. Thanks.
Licensing requirement is there. Like, I mean, nobody forgets that, but still, that is something which is very important, licensing. And also the policy of the organization. As I had given you an instance where the organization policy or your customers policy itself is not of using any free tool, then how can you suggest them the Selenium? Got it? So that also plays very important role.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, guys. So, I mean, this is what we actually had planned for today. And in our tomorrow session, we have tomorrow a 4-hour session, right? 8 to 12, Saturday, right? So, tomorrow we will set up the components, like whatever the components we just talked about, script, driver, and I mean what browser, and then we will set up these components, and then we will start with basic scripts. Like the scripts, the initial scripts are going to, we are not going to take up any particular business application because our focus is mainly going to be on how to handle different kinds of interactions with different kinds of controls. Okay, so in UI automation, the main challenging part is how to handle, say, combo box, I mean drop down, how to handle list box, all the possible interactions on the list box, how to handle all the possible interactions with edit control, how to handle it in push button controls, how to handle different alerts. So our focus in our Selenium scripts is going to be on understanding Selenium APIs for handling different possible interactions on different types of controls. And when we will talk about framework, then we will take any application. But our main focus is on understanding the APIs of the tool. And that is what we are going to get started off from our tomorrow's session. Okay, so we will be writing the tests, few tests we would be, scripts we would be writing, few controls we would be writing the scripts for in our classroom sessions, and then few I would be giving you guys for home assignments, right? Okay, guys, you there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
from there.
Okay, so this is, I'll just stop the recording.
અહીંયા છે તારી book આટલામાં